And let's also get an economist's view of what is going on with housing, with the Fed expected to keep interest rates elevated through 2023. Our next guest says the housing market will likely be in a recession through this year. Abbey Omodunbi is a PNC senior economist. He joins us now. So these numbers aside for a moment, although they weren't great, housing recession this year. Talk us through that thesis. Is it going to happen? When is it going to happen? And what does that look like?
Thanks for having me. The housing market has been in a downturn since fall of 2022 due to elevated mortgage rates. We expect mortgage rates to remain elevated through 2023. And also, consumers are very concerned about the economy. Consumers are concerned about high inflation, about rising interest rates. And we expect the downturn, which started in fall of 2022, to continue through 2023.
And so with this kind of combined with where financial conditions currently sit and the prospects for financial conditions, is it going to be easier or harder for people who are looking to get into the housing market to get a loan that not only they qualify for, but is also on favorable terms for them over an extended period of time?
All right, so financial conditions will likely tighten in 2023. We do expect the Fed to raise the Fed's funds rate by a quarter of a percentage point when they meet in 2 weeks. And also, after the bank failures in March, many banks are likely to be more cautious. So we might see some tighter lending standards. So we are forecasting that, we are going to get a 10% decline in house prices this year. There will be more of a balance in the housing market. There will be less demand and more supply, and that will contribute to the decline in house prices, which we're currently forecasting.
And as we know, the housing market is really different region by region. Even what I was just talking about for this past month's existing home sales, right, that the Northeast was fairly steady, the other regions fell. When you look at that 10% price decline, what does that look like sort of region by region? Or is that, more the average everywhere?
Right. So we saw massive price increases in, many areas in the West, right? So think of Boise, Idaho, San Francisco, San Diego. Those were clearly unsustainable. So I think we're going to see bigger increases in the Western states. And also just on a month-over-month basis in recent months, we've been seeing bigger declines in the Western states compared to the Eastern states. And I think that is likely going to continue through 2023.
And so additionally here, let's talk about some of the housing starts and permits particularly, because they fell in March, and some of them really driven by declines in multifamily segments there. Where do we expect that to begin to balance out?
Right. So we saw big declines in the multifamily segments, but we actually saw big increases in single family starts. So starts were actually up for the first quarter of this year. But I think that's, for the rest of this year, we're likely to see a decline in starts due to higher financing costs for home builders. We've seen an improvements in home builder sentiment in recent months, but it's still below the key break-even measure of 50. So home building conditions are still bad. I don't expect there to be a substantial improvement of that this year. So I think we're likely to see a decline in starts and permits through the end of this year.
Abbey, what does all of this do for home ownership rates? This is a conversation that Brad and I have frequently, right? There's especially sort of millennial home ownership and affordability, et cetera. Is this drop, even if it's not a great thing for the overall economy, does it allow more people to get into the housing market?
I think, home ownership has been difficult for a lot of folks, particularly first-time homebuyers, given the big increases in house prices, which we've seen, particularly, since the pandemic started. I think that's, conditions will be more favorable for first-time homeowners this year, particularly because of the declines which we're expecting. So I think that we are going to see, more of a balance this year. We're going to see weaker demand due to higher financing costs. We're also going to see more supply come online. So we're going to see a lot of new construction that's going to come online, and that's potentially going to be beneficial for first-time homeowners.
What's the correlation that you're seeing, Abby? And I mean, even as we think about first-time homeowners, and I, as a millennial, kind of initiate my frowny face sequence because I'm just trying to get into that cohort of people who do own homes. Living in New York makes that harder. But anyway, at the end of the day, where should I be going to? I mean, a lot of people were talking about the regionality of where some of the inventory that's coming online is shifting, where some of these sales are shifting to as well. How is that correlating even with what we're seeing on the employment situation front, where you've got people who are looking to still maintain employment, but at the same time look for more affordable terms that they can live within, regardless of where that may be in the country, as long as there is a job available for them? How do you kind of compare the two together and meld the employment situation with the housing data?
Yes, so I think that after the Great Recession, one of the reasons why we had a Great Recession was because, we built too many homes. But we've had very tight supply for the past decade. So I think that, there will need to be, some improved supply in terms of new construction. And I think that's where new-time homeowners, will be able to, tap into that. They'll be able to probably buy once we see improved construction of new homes, and which we expect. So I think that as inflation moderates and as supply chains continue to improve, we're going to see more construction come online, which, again, will be favorable to new homeowners.
Abbey Omodunbi, who is the PNC senior economist. Abbey, thanks so much for the time here with us this morning. We appreciate it.